I'd like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, November 4th, 2024 to order. Clerk Tamer, please call the roll.
Bastido? Here. Oh, microphone. Oh, everyone turn
Oh,
your
I was going
microphones
to get to that, but yeah, so this is the new old-fangled, so you have to push the button so the red light goes on, and then you speak, and then when you're done.
Sixth Ward will show you how it's done.
And then turn it off when you're done. Sixth Ward. Thank you.
Working. Oh. Bastido?
Thank you, Sixth Ward.
Just press it once.
I know, I did. Here.
Nardini?
Nardini is here.
Oh.
Oh, one at a time.
Hello.
Okay, one at
Brennan?
Here.
One more time.
Here.
Deuter? Hill?
Present.
Schenko?
Here.
Jensen?
Here.
Bram? Park absent. Nudera?
Here. Goes on after Fred.
11 present, 3 absent.
I see this is going to go very smoothly. So, item 2 on the agenda is public comment. Clerk Tamer, has anyone signed in for public comment?
Is that back there? No. No one signed in, Mayor.
All right. We'll move on to the business before the committee. City Manager, is there anything you want to present before we get into the agenda item?
I would like to thank everybody for their cooperation and understanding tonight as we accommodate early voting outside, and so we're in here. It's our anticipation that early voting will be done and ballots counted and cleared out of there by 8:30 so we can move in for our city council meeting. We do need to leave this door open for obvious reasons so that people know that we're meeting and they can come in. So it might be a little noisy. Appreciate using the microphones. Again, it's a little older system, but I think we'll get used to it. Other than that, Mayor, we have the Heritage Foundation here along with Dave Oberg, Executive Director of our History Museum, to present their budget.
Is that microphone working there?
Seems to be, yeah.
Tap on it, Dave.
Doesn't seem to be. But
Doesn't seem to be.
It will not amplify.
Okay, fine, good. So we're doing, so everyone knows that's so that the people who are watching at home or on the recording later will be able to do it. All right, so Director Oberg, let me turn it over to you then.
All right, thank you, Mayor Levin. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to hand things over first to the president of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, George Stepaniak, who's going to share some of the things we accomplished at the Elmhurst History Museum with the support of the City of Elmhurst and the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, outline some of the very important things we have lined up for 2025, and then I will follow up with just a few brief comments and answer any questions you might have. President Stepaniak.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor Levin, City Manager Grabowski, Assistant Manager Johnson, and members of the City Council and staff. Thank you for inviting us to make our budget request presentation as part of the city's annual budget process. My name is George Stepaniak, and I am the current president of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Tonight, several members of the foundation are here to support us, and I would like for them to stand to acknowledge them and acknowledge their dedication to not only the foundation, but the city of Elmhurst.
Raise your hands.
Okay, thank you. The mission of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is to be the fundraising and the arm of the Elmhurst History Museum and a Churchville one-room schoolhouse, and as such, the foundation is a 501c3. The foundation supports the museum and schoolhouse in a variety of ways, including advocating and educating the community, helping market the wonderful programs and exhibits the museum offers, and fundraising and reaching out to the public, both individually and generally. This is to obtain annual grants for the museum and to provide the museum for their needs and support the various exhibits and educational goals of the museum. This fundraising augments the city's approved museum budget. In 2024, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation approved a grant to support 100% of the expenses related to the Elmhurst History Museum's exhibitions and programs for the entire year, through the city and foundation support as well. Elmhurst History Museum 2024 accomplishments include 3 major exhibitions, each of which drew strong audiences from Elmhurst and the surrounding communities and helped foster new partnerships. Some exhibits drew widespread media attention. The year began, as Dave had mentioned earlier, with the blockbuster exhibit Lost Chicagoland Department Stores, which explored the history of Marshall Fields, Carson Peary Scott, Goldblatt's, Montgomery Ward, Sears, Weebolt's, and this exhibit broke all previous attendance records. And this exhibit also was significant in regional and even national coverage and multimedia sources. Am I coming across on a microphone?
You're not coming out of the microphone, but that's for the people.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Spring saw the opening of Victory at Home, 1941-1945, a retrospective of the World War II home front in Elmhurst and the western suburbs. And in the fall, the museum opened Chicagoland Movie Palaces, A Century of Folly and Film. The last exhibit coincided with the centennial of Elmhurst's York Theater and explores the evolution of movie theaters from the era of vaudeville to current age. In addition, the museum has begun the construction of a public performance space on the museum's east lawn, supported by Illinois Public Museum Capital Grant. The groundbreaking event for this project occurred on September 30th, and the project will be completed over the winter. The museum is currently working with the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation on a small capital campaign to raise additional private sector dollars to support this effort. The museum is constantly engaged in family-friendly programs in support of its major exhibits, including a 1940s themed cooking class, a visit from members of the Rockford Peaches Vintage Baseball Club, programs on Victory Gardens, and Women's Air Force service pilots, plus a bus tour of iconic movie palaces, lectures about Chicago and classic holiday films, and special screenings in partnership with York Theater, Elmhurst Public Library, and the City Center. Additionally, family-friendly historic programs include a visit from Pamela Welcome as Harriet Tubman, a new lecture about Elmhurst men and women who made important contributions to arts and culture, and a family day at the Churchville one-room schoolhouse. Also, there's going to be 4 mini exhibits in the By All Accounts exhibition, calling attention to community milestones and local history, and I'll speak about that a little bit later. The continuation of perennial favorites includes the museum's Our Town versus Gown vintage baseball game. Perhaps some of you had played in those games. The Museum Explorers Summer Camp, the Museum Maker Monday program, the 10th Elmhurst Craft Beer Fest, and incidentally, we just completed the 9 in September, and it was extremely well attended. It was a very successful event. There will also be narrated trolley tours, the annual Sold Out Quarry Tour, and much more. The past year saw the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation work with Alan Stewart, friends and family, to establish the Dr. Virginia R. Stewart Endowment Fund, named in honor of former Elmhurst History Museum Director Virginia Stewart, to help underwrite new programs and performances at the museum. Earned income from this new endowment fund will help support a great line of concerts in 2025 on the new public performance venue, and will support scholarly programs in the museum for years to come. In addition, the museum received the professional recognition by the Illinois Association of Museums. The Elmhurst History Museum team received an award of superior achievement in recognition of the restoration of the rare 19th century painting by artist G.P.A. Healy of early Elmhurst resident Jane Bird Bryan, and an award of excellence for the extraordinary partnerships and programming supporting its recent exhibition In Pursuit of Happiness, Immigrants in Our Communities. That certainly seems relevant. The Elmhurst Heritage Foundation raised the private sector dollars needed to acquire and restore the portrait of Jane Bird Bryan and fully funded the award-winning programs recognized by the Illinois Association of Museums. 2025 goals for the museum. The museum team has dramatic plans for new exhibits, programs, and capacity building measures. Once again, Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is committed to supporting all exhibits and programs for the 2025 season and is committed to raising the needed funds to complete the capital campaign, which will allow completion of the new public performance space. Highlights for 2025 include 3 new exhibitions exploring local and regional history, beginning the year with Snapshots, Elmhurst Now and Then, which will showcase historical photographs and video footage of our changing community juxtaposed against modern images. And also there will be a new book highlighting historic and contemporary images of Elmhurst in support of that exhibit, Snapshots, Elmhurst Now and Then. Spring will see the opening of Acre by Acre, our farming heritage, which will explore how settlers transformed the land in DuPage County into thriving farms and showcase our agricultural history. This will be followed with the show World of Tomorrow, A Century of Progress, which highlights the 1933 World's Fair in Chicago. The massive exposition painted an inspiring and uplifting vision for the future during the depths of the Great Depression, drawing over 39 million attendees, including many Elmhurst attendants. A new summer concert series will be taking place at the museum's new bandshell. The museum will feature roster-friendly family performances, including a classical concert by members of the Elmhurst Symphony Orchestra, a patriotic performance by the Irving Sisters recalling the popular music of World War II, and I assume they're a takeoff on the Andrews Sisters.
Yep.
An appearance by beloved children's musician Jim Gill, bluegrass music courtesy of Bourbon Aristocracy, a blues concert by Special 20s, a jazz performance by the Coffee Jazz Collective, salsa and cumbia music courtesy of Carpaccio y su Super Combo. I got that right. A new book highlighting historic, and well, I already mentioned about the new book. And as I wrap up, I just want to mention there's family-friendly programs in support of the museum's exhibitions, including a Farm Heritage Day on the museum grounds with music, vintage farm equipment, games, crafts, and a petting zoo, community celebration in honor of the 50th anniversary of the museum's move into the Gloss Mansion, and a haunted history tour for the fall. A new documentary exploring the growth and evolution of the Elmhurst History Museum and Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, and 4 mini history spotlight exhibits in the By All Accounts exhibition, calling attention to community milestones and local history. And finally, a continuation of the perennial favorites, including the Museum Town versus Gout Vintage baseball game, the Museum Explorers Camp, the Museum Modern Monday program, another Elmhurst Craft Beer Fest, narrated trolley tours, guided walking tours, and more. So in summary, working together, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation and the City of Elmhurst have created a strong partnership that allows Elmhurst History Museum to continue to punch well above its weight and be recognized as a leader, a real leader in the Illinois museum community. Thank you.
Thank you, George. I just want to say, because in times of difficult politics, George and I met when we ran against each other for mayor, became friends and developed mutual respect back in 2009. And he's a longtime alderman, served in 2 wards, so he knows something about the city council. It's good to see you again, George.
Well, thank you. It's a great city. I'm so glad that my wife and I lived here, and my wife was born and raised in Elmhurst, so she never left.
How unusual. Director Oberg.
All right. Well, thank you, George, and just want to follow up on just a couple things and then answer any questions you might have. As George mentioned, we are looking forward to 50 years next year in the Gloss Mansion in 2025, and we're going to be both looking backwards and celebrating the preservation of an important local landmark, and looking forward as we cut the ribbon on our new public performance space. That new addition to our campus will allow for future growth for the museum, have a positive network on local business, impact on local businesses, and attract a lot of new audiences and building capacity for the institution. We anticipate completion of construction just after the first of the year on our new amenity, followed by landscaping early spring and our first concert by the end of May, so an exciting year ahead of us. Looking at the proposed 2025 budget that's before you, you're going to see that there are no significant changes to any of the line items over 2024. As in past years, staff includes 4 full-time and 4 part-time employees, or 5.75 full-time equivalents. These include me, a curator of collections, a curator of exhibits, and a curator of education and public programs in a full-time capacity, with an administrative assistant, marketing and communications specialist, education and programs assistant, and weekend supervisor in part-time and seasonal roles. I will note that the 2024 budget, line items 532-105 educational programs, 532-115 exhibitions, and 532-110 EHF supplemental funds are all fully supported by the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation, and upon final invoicing from the City of Elmhurst, will return to 0 for fiscal year 2024. In addition, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation will provide $5,000 in support towards line item 530100 consultant fees in the current fiscal year, reducing that figure to $7,000. Looking ahead to 2025, I'm pleased to note that the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is once again fully committed to supporting 100% of the expenses for museum programs and exhibitions, as well as $5,000 towards consultant fees. In addition, the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation is also committed to a $60,000 capital campaign, which George had just mentioned, to raise additional dollars for the public performance space, for a total supported package in fiscal year 2025 of $140,000. At this time, I'd be happy to discuss any future plans we have or answer any questions you might have as you look through this budget.
Thank you, Director, and for the members of the committee, we're on page 2-71 of your book. Discussion. Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 271, the consultant fees, 530100, that was just mentioned, and this might be more for the finance director. Is 100% of those fees one of the consultants we talked about earlier in this budget cycle, the KBC? Is that the total of 12,000?
That's we have no other consultants in there other than Ken Bartel's consulting, correct?
Okay. Follow up to that, the next line item, what is the difference between what's being done with the consultant fees and then the professional services? Is that for the exhibits, et cetera?
Professional services line item is actually earmarked specifically for a lot of the promotional materials that we generate to support the exhibitions we do. So that's the the calendar of events that goes out quarterly to each of the homes, and a number of the posters, advertising materials, direct mail pieces that go out. That's what's captured in professional services.
And then the last question in regards to the same topic, do we have an idea, a rough estimate on how much has been fundraised by the Heritage Foundation in the last fiscal year, and what is the goal for this year?
I can tell you that I can break this down probably almost from memory. I might be off by a couple of dollars, but I know that the current Elmhurst Craft Beer Fest is a little north of net profit of $57,000 that is going towards operations and a lot of the exhibits and programs here. We had an annual appeal which generated just a little over $50,000. The current exhibit sponsorship program generated just a little over $16,000 in addition to that. And then, of course, we have an ongoing capital campaign towards the completion of the public performance space, which as of today in pledges and what is actually going to be received is close to the $60,000 target mark that we actually set for ourselves. Those are the significant fundraising efforts that we have going on. The new annual appeal is going to go out in the next couple of weeks. That drops in November. I would encourage everybody, if you get one of those, please support us. And that's to say nothing of the, I will say the other thing is the establishment of the new Virginia R. Stewart Endowment Fund. We had an initial gift of $20,000 from the family to establish that fund, and another $10,000 raised from friends of that family as well. So $30,000 invested to generate new funds towards programming as well, and that is invested through DuPage Foundation.
Thank you. I just want to compliment the foundation. This is kind of old hat for me now. I was kind of an early doubter early on, about 15, 20 years ago with the History Museum, and we're spending all these dollars, and what are we seeing in return? I would say within the last 10 years, I've been switched, I've reversed, where I'm a large supporter. The foundation, as well as the staff at the History Museum, has done a great job. Not only fundraising, but incredible, as already mentioned, incredible exhibits that not only touch locally, but touch across the country. So good job to the staff, yourself, Director, as well as the foundation. So thanks all.
Thank you.
All right, additional discussion, Alderman Brennan.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm on page 272. So building improvements. Director, over the last several years, there have been a number of projects at the mansion, and I see nothing's planned for right now next year or the following year. Is there anything on the horizon that you're fearful of?
No, fearful of no. What I would say is the 2024 figure is a very large figure that you're seeing as far as capital improvements for the site. That represents the band shell project.
Yeah.
A little of that probably will end up being a rollover as we get closer. It just kind of depends on how completion happens. They're hoping for delivery of this before New Year's, but it could come in a little later, and certainly a little of the landscaping may end up as a rollover into the next fiscal year. Sadly, there right now are no new Illinois Public Museum capital grant dollars at all in the state of Illinois. As a matter of fact, there's been no new capital bill that's come down from Springfield. So I keep my eyes out for other grant opportunities, but right now this is a pretty major project we're finishing off, so that's kind of the biggest brick and mortar piece we have right now on the horizon.
Great. You answered my next question. I was wondering if there are future grant dollars potentially available. So
We
thank
hope,
you.
and I go to Springfield every year to talk to
Yeah.
elected officials about how important that would be.
Well, great job. I love the ambitious planning and program that you've all put together. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Additional discussion? Alderman Toledo.
Thank you for being here tonight. Just out of curiosity, do you keep records of kind of foot traffic or any kind of audience numbers that people you touch through your programs on a yearly basis?
Yes, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it, so absolutely.
Could we just have that brought to as a circle back, especially since you already track it? I think it would just help tell the great story of that we're hearing tonight.
Yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
very easy to provide.
Thank you.
Additional discussion? All right. I think that we are complete on that item. Thank you to both of you and to your entire board for coming out to present to us. And we'll move on to the next item, which is, now depending, I have on the agenda motor fuel tax fund, but we already covered that, didn't we?
Just give us 1 minute here. As we say at staff meeting, who wants to go next? Nobody wants to follow Dave over.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, George. Thanks so much. Yeah, thank you very much.
We're going to shuffle a couple chairs here. Yeah. Take your time. Yeah, take your time, George.
Thank you. Thanks.
Scoot over here. Need a Brian, let's see. I don't need that. Oop. Yeah. Ken, you want to grab Stan? Okay. Director of Public Works is coming in to have part of this conversation along with our city engineer. So our staff members are next door in conference room 4 to keep room here for public who may want to sit in on this, and they'll be coming in and out as different budgets are called. Mayor, so to answer your question, at the last meeting, or maybe 2 meetings ago, there was a question about MFT and the shift in our budget process. And so Director of Finance put together the memo that was attached on board docs, and I think we're going to just walk through that right now and then answer questions on it.
And we want the same enthusiasm for motor fuel tax that Director Olberg brings to the museum.
I will certainly try, but as Jim said, following Dave is always a tough act that nobody wants, and I drew the short straw tonight. So, I attached a memo to this agenda item in board docs, as well as many attachments for everyone to review. I'm going to give a very high-level overview as to the shift that happened, and then draw your attention to a couple documents that I want to make sure you know are in the packet. And then at the end, I'll turn it over to Director Balicki to talk about the specific projects that are in the MFT fund. And certainly, if he wants to cover anything that he thinks that I missed that he wants to add on. So the first item in your packet is the attachment A, which is a backwards and forwards look at the motor fuel tax fund. So the motor fuel tax fund is a special revenue fund. It is a fund where we receive our share of state motor fuel taxes. It is a restricted fund in that we can only use those revenue sources for very specific things that the state says that we can use them for. And then based off of what we use it for, they tell us how many hoops we have to jump through to claim those expenses for the motor fuel tax. So prior to 2020, in the motor fuel tax fund, we primarily used those funds for salaries, a portion of public works, streets, and electrical employee salaries, and then also our road salt expenses. That was prior to 2020. In 2020, the city started receiving what is known as Rebuild Illinois funds, and all municipalities received a share of these funds. The city received almost $3 million in Rebuild Illinois funds. Those funds were required to be put in the MFT fund, and they were required to be used for capital projects. So at that time, what the city did is we shifted what I'll call our more major road reconstruction projects. So projects that were more involved than simple grind and repave. We shifted those projects into the MFT fund at that time and used that Rebuild Illinois funding to pay for those projects. And what that did is that did free up general fund resources that we've used for the regular road program. That funding, the Rebuild Illinois funding that I mentioned, will be exhausted by the end of 2024. So we use that for Brush Hill and for the Park Avenue and First Avenue bridge deck replacements. So there were a lot of great projects that the city used that funding for. But moving forward, we had really 2 choices in how to proceed with MFT funding and those road reconstruction programs. We could shift all of the reconstruction programs back into the general fund and have the general fund pay for them as we had in the past. Or staff looked at, we could shift the salaries that are currently being charged in the MFT fund to the general fund, and then use the MFT fund solely as a dedicated source for the more major reconstructions, and continuing to use it for salt. And then one item we did move in was street-like electricity. We chose to do the latter, the street reconstructions, and the reason being that, one, it provides a dedicated funding source for those activities. Second, the administrative burden to claim salary and benefit cost in MFT for the state is very administratively burdensome. So it really solves 2 issues. One, it provides that funding for the reconstruction program, and 2, it is the most administratively simple thing for us to do. So it kind of achieves two objectives. So to highlight a couple other items that are in the packet, so attachment B is just a history of our road program. So all the different components of the road program and where they have been paid for over time and going forward. Attachment C is the annual mileage that we've had for each program. And then I want to highlight specifically attachment D. So one of the questions that we were asked as we were looking through the different public works budgets was, can you show the council how this reallocation works? Show us where the salaries came out of the MFT fund, show us where they went into the general fund, and kind of prove that out. And so this attachment D does exactly that. At the top, you'll see the MFT fund budget sheet. You'll see what is being reduced out of the MFT fund. At the bottom, you'll see the general fund, and you'll show how the general fund has increased for all of those same accounts for the same departments, because MFT had forestry, general fund has forestry, MFT had electrical, general fund had electrical. And you'll see the net difference between those two at the very bottom is just over $44,000 is the net difference between the two, and that's just the annual salary adjustments that we have that make up that difference. So this wanted to draw attention specifically to this spreadsheet because it answers that question that the council had asked at a previous meeting. So at that point, I will ask Director Balicki if he wants to add anything that I missed, or and to maybe go over the projects.
Thank you. I'll just highlight a few of the projects that are included in the MFT fund for 2025. The first of those is the Alma Avenue roadway reconstruction project from Elm Park to Berkeley. And that project is intended to also include traffic calming intersection improvements at each end of that street at Elm Park and at Berkeley. And this project also includes the resurfacing of Elm Park. That was a road that saw a water main improvement a couple years ago, and we've kind of been waiting to come back and couple the resurfacing of that street with some other work, and so that will be included with this project. That is budgeted at $944,000 for 2025. The other project that is in there for next year is a continuation of engineering design on the Butterfield and York intersection improvements. This is, in total, this is approximately about a $1.9 million project at that intersection. A very significant portion of that project is funded through federal grants to the tune of about $1.5 million of that. That project has seen some delays because that's a project with the grant funding and with the involvement of the state highway at Butterfield Road that involves a lot of coordination with IDOT. And so we are progressing on it, but that is one that's going to continue into 2025 in engineering design.
Those are KEB sheets 54 and 55 if anyone's looking to follow along on that.
So and then the other two that are included for 2025, we've got on KEB sheet 56 is the First Street and Park Avenue bridge painting project. That was something that was originally planned to be kind of part of those bridge rehabilitations that happened over the past couple of years. It was something that we were basically kind of taking us out of our fiscal constraints that we had in place for 2024 to be able to make that happen. So it was kind of rebudgeting that work to happen in 25 and come back and do that work on the structure of those bridges. And the last one for 2024 is the Cayuga Avenue roadway reconstruction project. That is estimated to be about a $1.7 million project, eventually happening in 2027, and there's $135,000 that's budgeted in 2025, again, for engineering design. That is, again, a reconstruction of Cayuga from York to Poplar. And those are the 4 major projects included in MFT. Be happy to answer any questions.
All right, discussion? Alderman Toledo?
Thank you. Thank you to staff for putting this together. I think it's very helpful for everyone to be aware of how the puts and takes are working and the reasoning why staff is recommending this change. All of it is very rational. All of it makes a lot of sense. I had the opportunity to speak with Director Coyle this afternoon. I learned a couple additional things that was helpful through going through this exercise, so hopefully everyone appreciated that. I think the last thing that I am hung up on a little bit is staff's recommendation to put the, and I understand why, but to put 140,000 of the full shift onto the property tax levy. So that's the amount that staff didn't solve for within the general fund on their own. And the reason they put it in the property tax levy is a reasonable reason, and it's a great starting point, and it's because it's the city policy to cover IMRF and benefits in 80% in the tax levy. So we have other public works employee salaries and benefits that are on that line item. My only problem with that is twofold. One, once you put it on, it's always there. It's a step up. It doesn't go away, even though it is according to our policy. Two, out of all of that they couldn't solve for, they are solving for 1.1 million or 1.2 million within the general fund. And they're going to put they want to put 140,000 of it on the property tax. So then we have to explain to the residents we're increasing property tax for $140,000 out of a $62.6 million revenue budget. Like, can't we just find that $140,000 somewhere as a rounding error? I mean, it's a rounding error. And then to put it onto the property taxes and then have to explain that to residents. I don't think, even though there is a policy, other parts of those salaries and benefits are, not necessarily always on the property tax levy. I just don't think the juice is worth the squeeze for the explanation for that component out of that big of a budget. So that's kind of where I'm at on that as far as understanding how all of that's working. I think everything else makes a lot of sense. It's rational. I would just ask for council to think about, is it worth putting $140,000 on the property tax levy for this change, which is a reasonable, rational change to do. So that's kind of what I wanted to say and explain.
Did you want to circle back on this?
Sure. Since I guess in my comments I asked council to think about it. So if we want to circle back, then we can, do something about it during the circle back if we want to.
All right, and does staff have any additional comments in terms of Alderman Toledo's comments that they want to add at this time, or would you rather wait till the circle back?
Nothing to add right now. We'll wait for the circle back.
All right.
And have the discussion.
Alderman Toledo? Alderman Bastido? They have a lot of O's.
I just want to make sure I understand what Alderman Toledo is saying. So the $144,000, if we go with what you were suggesting, that would just mean that we were going slightly against our policy, right? Which is that 80% of salaries and other costs are covered by property tax. Is that right? So you're saying it's just a small amount. It would be okay to go against it, the policy, maybe considering what the alternative is. I'm just making sure I was understanding what you were saying. And we haven't done that before?
Alderman Toledo, you go first.
Well, yeah, and I mean, maybe part of the circle back could be whether or not, I think the policy is 80%. So that means 20% already isn't on property tax. And so for $140,000, is it worth, and maybe staff in the circle back could give us what the percentage is if we didn't put it on the property tax, what the percentage difference in the 80% policy would be. Would it be 70, 4%, you know, or, you know what I mean? Like, how far off from the policy would it be? Oh, how far off from the policy it would be. But that is essentially, yeah, I'm basically saying, like, is it better to follow a policy, or is it better to explain to the public a small number to follow a policy? I think, you know, you can make an argument either way.
Alderman Bastido?
So just to follow up, I guess part of the circle back, I guess I'd be curious to hear, I'm surprised this hasn't happened before, it hasn't come up, that we haven't had to make this adjustment, so I would be curious to hear the history.
May I just add one thing
Yeah,
too?
go ahead.
So one of the things too, when Alderman Toledo and I spoke this afternoon that we talked about is, one option is to not follow the policy. The other option is there any additional general fund cost that we can shift into the MFT fund that is, you know, still an administratively easy cost for the city to claim. So that was a second option that we discussed that we can also review as part of the circle back.
Yeah, I'm not going to address it now, but I do think that it's better not to go against the policy and to find a different workaround. But Alderman Nardini, then Alderman Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Either now or at the circle back, can you explain what this policy is that is 80% of something?
So the city has had a policy of using our tax levy to fund 80% of the Social Security, Medicare, and IMRF pension costs for city personnel costs. And so we have always, you know, had that levy be 80% of whatever that budget amount is for the year, and that's what we've claimed.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it'd be helpful for if we have to try to find a way to explain it to residents why we're increasing it by $140,000 to understand what our property tax levy would be if we just kept up the rate of inflation since, say, 2019, which was the last time it appreciably changed. Thank you.
All right. Alderman Toledo?
Sorry, not to beat a dead horse, but like if that's the policy and those funds were those salaries and benefits were being paid for by MFT, we have been violating the policy all along.
I guess I'd clarify that to say 80% of the costs in the general fund. I'd clarify that.
Okay, so that would force the change, because moving that
Yes.
into the general fund,
Yes.
then whatever's in the general fund, then 80% of that
Yes.
should be.
Yeah, so we don't claim, so for example, the MUF fund, we don't claim those on the property tax levy, even though there are FICA and those types of costs in the MUF. So it's 80% of the general fund.
Got it.
All right. Alderman Brennan?
Thank you. I'm on cab 56, painting the First Street and Park Avenue Bridge. So totally get it carrying over from the reconstruction project. The thing that jumped out at me initially, Director Balicki, was that the painting, is it beautification or is it actually required to get longevity out of the steel?
Good question. It's the latter.
Okay.
And it's the same reason why we would do that kind of work to our water towers and things like that. Any kind of oxidation on that metal, if it's not protected, obviously it starts to happen pretty rapidly. So really kind of think of it as a coating project for that metal surface to protect it and make it last longer.
So because of that, it's painting, but it's painting on steroids, right? So when I look at $325,000 to paint, you know, the underbelly of a bridge, it seems exorbitant to me, but I gotta believe part of the process here is the treatment and the special paint required to do the work.
It's like it probably can relate from home. The preparation work means a lot, and so there's that part of it. The other thing to think about is in that Palmer Drive underpass where the contractor would be working, there's a very kind of high amount of traffic control that's required in that area, just due to the amount of traffic and also the fact that they sort of have to work lane by lane. It'll be kind of a moving operation from one end to the other. So there's a lot of kind of logistics in terms of breaking down and setting up as they go across that span.
Excellent, thank you.
Alderman Jensen?
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. One other thing that I think would be helpful is a list of, in one convenient place, of all the C and D level priority projects from the general fund. I didn't see many scanning, but it'd be a helpful place to start for if we're going to find $140,000. Thank you.
Alderman Nardini?
Something I just wanted to say, the memo you put together, one, is super easily read, and if, in my understanding of council, if that was put together because of the questions that we asked, wow, thank you for the explanation. It very much elucidates the fund.
Alderman Irby?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm on attachment B, historical. It's a great spreadsheet that shows your budget, and at the very bottom has some really nice numbers of total lane miles per year. Starts at 2015, goes to 2023, where you can calculate a metric of cost per mile. But then when we get to 2024 or 25, we don't have a total lanes miles per year. So is that because they're estimates, or we don't have them, or can we get them? Would that be best addressed tonight or circle back?
I would say circle back.
Thank you.
Circle back it is. City Treasurer?
I'm good on motor fuel tax.
All right. I will translate. He didn't have his microphone. He's good on motor fuel tax. All right. Anyone else? Okay. Then we will move on to our next item, which is planning, zoning, and economic development.
We
Wait
just
a
need to
minute,
do
our-
another seating change.
Our contestants are in the soundproof room. We will bring them out, and they will not have heard what the previous people have said. Right, 2-37. Alderman Brennan was expressing a concern about refreshments back in the green room. Are they? All right.
The Oreo cookies are gone. Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. As you said, we're starting on page 2-37 with the Planning and Development Cost Center. This cost center includes both the Planning and Zoning Department, which is 2 staff members, and the Business Development Department, which is 1 staff member. And I have Eileen Franz and Heather Breckus with me here today in case there's any specific questions. Specifically about the Planning and Zoning Department, the 2024 accomplishments and 2025 expectations are on pages 1-53 and 1-54. The Planning and Zoning Department aids the Zoning and Planning Commission, the Development, Planning and Zoning Committee, and the City Council regarding applications for zoning relief and applications for conditional use, map, and text amendments to the zoning ordinance and amendments to the comprehensive plan. In 2024, the Planning and Zoning Division processed more than 20 cases for conditional use, PUDs, and variations, and continued facilitating the update of the Elmhurst 1992 zoning ordinance. The Planning and Zoning Division also assisted in tracking of the sustainability plan, worked with MMC to partner on Homes for a Changing Region, and worked with Housel Levine Associates on the downtown plan update. Both the zoning ordinance updates and the downtown plan are expected to be completed in early 2025, and some minor funds are expected to be carried over to complete these tasks. Moving on to the Business Development Department, again, their accomplishments and expectations are on page 143 and 144. The Business Development Department helps both existing and prospective businesses in terms of various items, including explore Elmhurst opportunities, grant opportunities, and general networking. This department also represents the city with the City Center, Spring Road Business District, Economic Development Commission, Chamber of Commerce, etc. The city continues to have one of the lowest vacancy rates in DuPage County for commercial properties, and the business development manager has a large role with that. Also of note, one of the highlights of 2024 is working to simplify and streamline the liquor license renewal process through the city's online system. City staff spent considerable time walking businesses through the process. Up next in late 2024 and continuing into early 2025 will be business licenses through this new system as well. So moving on to a couple highlights of the cost center before you. Line 530110, which is professional services. This includes funds to update the Elmhurst subdivision ordinance, which is a companion document to the zoning ordinance, and has not been comprehensively updated since its adoption in 1993. Additionally, the Sustainability Action Plan adopted in 2018 is due for an update, and money has been included to hire a consultant to complete the update. Finally, line item 530110 also includes funds to assist in the preliminary implementation of anticipated recommendations in the newly adopted downtown plan. Excuse me, I should say the forthcoming adopted downtown plan. Line 530115, which is memberships and subscriptions, includes an additional $5,000 request for the Choose DuPage Municipal Analytics Program. This is a shared cost among multiple municipalities within DuPage County, and the program will provide key data and insights on employment, trade, economics, etc. And lastly, of note, line 530295, public information, includes a request for an additional $10,000 for events like Makers and Shakers, Women in Leadership, and the Real Estate Brokers event. All these events are extremely successful and are a great benefit to the local business community. Rising costs for event spaces and general expenses related to these events are the reason for the additional budget request in 2025. And with that, I'll entertain any questions on this particular cost center.
All right, discussion. Alderman Brennan?
I have no question, but just a comment. I have friends all over DuPage, Cook County, and when they come to Elmhurst, unsolicited, they're like, wow, what a great town, what a great vibe. So keep on doing what you're doing.
Alderman Nardini?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you elaborate on the professional services, the subdivision ordinance update, and the downtown plan from 2023 to this budget, and then to the proposed 2025, what's going on this year and next year that hasn't gone on in 2023?
Alderman Nardini, do you have a particular line to which you want to refer us?
That would be 237, line 530110.
So we had a lofty goal in '24. There was actually a circle back at last year's budget meeting asking if the planning department can take on all these things we wanted to do in '24. We certainly tried our best with Mike Kopp retiring and me moving into the role and working with Eileen and Jess and the others. Some of the things are getting pushed in next year. We did start the downtown plan in 2024. We did start the downtown plan in 2024, but the subdivision ordinance update, which we had planned to do, has not started yet, and neither has a sustainability update. So actually the estimated number in 2024 does say $363,000, which is the same as a budget. That number, I believe we gave to finance several months ago when we were still thinking we might be able to get these planning exercises done. But in looking today, and I will, not to put the finance department on the spot, it looks like we've only spent $160,000 out of that 363. So again, the number has gone down considerably of what we spent this year. And so in 25, we hope to pick up the torch, if you will, on those two planning documents.
If I may, thank you. So what you're saying is, I'm just going to repeat what I think you just said, is that the estimated is actually about half of the 360.
Roughly, yes.
I understand, thanks.
Alderman Irby?
Thank you, Mayor. The Planning and Zoning Committee and the team over there are a great team, and they have a huge demand that's put onto them by the builders people asking for zoning variances, planning unit developments. My hat's off to them. The only thing that I wish council would look at carefully is when you take their total budget and we say back off the engineer, the Camaros update consultant, and you go back to 2022, 2023, 2024, and you neutralize the numbers and take that out, and you divide that by the number of cases that they have, we come up with about almost $27,000 a case in 2022. We come up with almost $33,000 a case in 2023. This year it looks like we might equalize down to $25,000 to $27,000 a case, depending how many we have past October. I added 3 more to get that number, put us at 26 cases. So my point of this is, should we not be looking at increasing the fees for someone coming up and saying, oh, I want a PUD, and I'm going to put $7,500 or whatever correct me if I'm wrong, whatever the fee is for a PUD. In reality, they should be coming up with $30,000 or $25,000 minimum. So why are we so expensive? Why are we such a good deal to the builder and not to the taxpayer?
Can you tell me where you're getting the number by which you're dividing by the number of cases?
That's back on page 150. What you had in your opening comments, ACM?
1-54 lists the zoning case history going back to 2019.
Right, they put a performance metric chart at the bottom, which I appreciate greatly.
So that's the number of cases, and then you're dividing
I'm
that.
dividing the total budget by, and then I reduced the full $363,000 for line item 530110, and then divided that by an additional 3 cases that might happen the rest of the year, which comes up to 26 cases, which is 3 higher than any of the other previous 2 years. And when you do that, you get to about $25,000 a case, which is a lot less than it was in 2022. So they're doing some good performance in 2024. I give them credit for that. That's great. But the general trend is, I don't think we're charging enough to the people coming asking for the permits.
And I'm sorry,
The zoning cases.
Yeah, I'm just not following. I understand the number of cases, but could you point to the line item that you're dividing to get?
There is no line item. It's at the bottom, total planning and development.
All right, well,
on page 2-37.
I mean, I'm not sure it's fair to do. They do a whole lot more than the cases.
Well, what would that be? Then that would be a circle back.
Well, I think everything they do is what's in these pages, starting at, from 1-53, all the like I can tell you, I've sat in on DPZ. They've spent hours and hours going over the downtown plan in terms of what we did in the proposed ordinance changes. I mean, there's a whole, we can circle back, but.
Right. I think if we reduce those like I did taking at the Camaros number, taking those numbers out, getting an adjusted total planning and development that's applicable to the zoning, minus the one-offs, then we can come up with a number, and that would be what we should be charging for PUDs, variances, especially commercial. Our fee structure is not covering our cost, is my opinion.
All right, we'll circle back. And I'll let staff work on it. I don't know how you would do it unless you actually track the hours of staff, like attorneys do, to figure out, what the total hours are, then figure out, their rate and benefits. But I'm not sure it's there, but we'll let staff look at it, and we'll do that as a circle back.
I appreciate that. It'd be a great attempt.
I like this. I realize it's the old Mayo daily system. I can just cancel anybody out here, so. Other discussion? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to building on 2-39.
As the mayor said, we're on pages 2-39 and 2-40 for the building department. Through October of 2024, the building department has issued nearly 1,500 permits with a total construction value of approximately $216 million. In 2024, the building department implemented the EnerGov platform, which is a Tyler ERP product for all permit applications and inspection requests. Year-to-date, the building department has issued 48 new home permits, and several more are currently in the queue this fall. There were 62 new homes last year issued at the same time for comparison. We expect to see similar brisk construction activity not only in residential but also commercial properties. Some of the projects which were either started in 2024 or planned for in 2025 are the following sites, McMaster Carr, 36 new townhomes on Lake Street, construction of approximately 48 new single-family homes throughout the community, as I noted. The Elmhurst University did a large expansion building. The hospital has a new addition that they're working on. We had a new commercial construction warehouse site on Addison Avenue to the west of York Street in the North Corridor. And then Yorkies 2 is a new restaurant that is opening up on St. Charles Road west of 83. Those are just a couple examples of larger commercial developments in the town. Just a couple budget highlights from this cost center. Line item 549999, that's a lot of nines. Other supplies includes an increase request of $5,000 to order more code of conduct signs. Those are the green signs that builders have to put out in front of each of their new construction builds. Those costs, although they're shown here, are offset by the revenue brought in by the builders paying for those signs when they pick up their permit. Line item 570600, which is vehicles, includes $96,000. Those are for 2 inspector vehicles that are planned to be replaced and are scheduled to do so next year. With that, I went through the building department pretty quick because there's not a lot of significant changes from year to year, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Alderman Irby, then Alderman Jensen.
Thank you, Mayor. Same line of questioning for building departments as I did for the previous zoning. Is it possible to get some performance metrics for the building department like we do for the previous one, so that we can do some metrics and see how much it cost per building, per department whole, and then if we need to back out some numbers to come up with what's a fair price for a building permit, that would be much appreciated.
Mayor, just to add, currently our permit fees are tied per the municipal code to the CPI, so they're increased every May, just to give additional background.
Yeah, and I won't go into it here, but we've had a recent building permit issue that it will cause me to ask someone, or I will ask the city manager to make a referral, because it's not only our own metric, but we kind of keep in tune with how other municipalities charge. Not that we have to do it the same way. Sometimes it's the size of the project, sometimes it's the value of the project. And so there are a couple of things that have come up. I don't know that if you can do a metric on it, that's fine, but we'll circle back. Okay. Alderman Jensen?
Thank you, Mayor. I was just wondering where those new vehicles are in the CAB in the back couple pages. I didn't see a line for building and building department. Are they in Public Works or?
I believe the numbers are E8 and E21. I think they're listed under the Public Works vehicles.
Cab 105.
Cab 105.
The account number is on the right.
Thank you.
Alderman Hill?
Thank you. Are those vehicle replacements, or are those new purchases? I wasn't sure if they were replacements or new purchases.
They're replacements.
They're replacements, okay. Sorry, you may have said that. You know, one thing I think is interesting when I look at the vehicle replacement schedule, you know, now I'm trying to be budget conscious even more so, thinking about where to find extra funds, but like I'm really I don't want to get into the nitty-gritty of that. I'm sure it's going to be a circle back, but I'd be interested, I'm glad we're looking at buying hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles when possible, it seems like, but I'd be interested to know what are the costs estimated for these cars, like, the individual sedans, and I'm not talking about the public works vehicles, but is there a way to be more selective on, a Toyota Prius is pretty cheap, but is there a way to be even more selective on costs there? So maybe there's like a ranking of top to bottom. We're looking, do we have to buy a Toyota Prius here as a Ford Focus Electric? I don't want to get into the weeds. I'd just be curious to see if you've got numbers to work with. If there's another way to rank the spreadsheet so I can see costs for sedans on vehicle replacements. I know it's a small thing. I'd just be curious to see that.
Are these bid out? We have a statewide bid list on these?
Yes. And
Go ahead.
I believe the fleet manager, you can see on that CAB 105 in 2025, for the 5 vehicles are 48,000. That's more or less a placeholder because, moving out of the pandemic, we still would have a vehicle in mind, a manufacturer and model, and we might move to something else because it's available. So I think the fleet manager has a vehicle in mind, but that 48 is a general range of what we could get for the type of vehicle that the building department would use.
And just so people understand, could you explain the process of how we bid these, when we get on a bid list?
Yeah, so we can use a couple of different methods. We can do a traditional bid where we put the specs together, send it out to a number of car dealers, put it on a bid list, and then get those responses. But Mayor, as you indicated, there's also pre-bid lists that are out there where that work has already been done. And as Assistant Manager Johnson kind of alluded to, we can just go on that list and pick which vehicle we need for our use. In this case, for the building department, they have supplies that they carry around, whether it's tools or instruments, or for code enforcement, they're collecting things. And so we use different vehicles for different positions. And so we would go through that list. And again, as Assistant Manager Johnson said, sometimes we may try for a Fusion and the manufacturer says, oh, we're not making those right now, as we've heard as we've gone to Public Works Committee on different vehicles. So we may shift to an Escape or something else. And so it's a pre-bid list that we're able to, by state law, pull vehicles from.
All right, additional discussion, Alderman Toledo.
Thank you. I just wanted to state my point of view with all due respect to Alderman Irby on his line of questioning related to planning and development and building and the fees. I don't believe they're not, those departments are not enterprise funds for a reason, meaning they're not meant to cover their own costs for a reason. Forcing an applicant to pay 100% of the cost of their application would discourage development, and it would actually disproportionately hurt small businesses and small homeowners or addition builders to their homes. So I appreciate that it's going to be a circle back, but I just wanted to put that out there for everyone's consideration. Thank you.
Alderman Ram.
Thank you. Excuse me. On page 239, and this is 2 different questions, but regarding staffing. So I'll just put it under 510100 on page 239. My question is in regards, twofold, one in regards to building and the other in regards to code enforcement for staffing. In my time, I've seen a little bit of turnaround for code enforcement. I think, from my recollection, we do mostly for code enforcement part-time employees and not full-time. I've been speaking to other communities about that. It seems like some other communities, not saying all, but do full-time, and therefore you have the longevity of code enforcement officers and they have that background and that knowledge. And then the same thing with building. Can you speak to that as well? Part-time versus full-time is my questioning on both of these topics.
Starting with code enforcement, so we have one full-time code enforcement. It's Michael's title.
Is his name
Code
Michael
enforcement
Bram?
officer, Michael Brum.
Oh.
And then we have a hand, 3 or 4 part-timers? 3. 3 part-time code enforcement officers as well. As far as the building department goes, primarily it's full-time. There is administratively, I think there's at least 1 part-time employee that works the counter, if you will, on a daily basis, and then we have a few inspectors that are part-time as well.
Do we think, the staff believe that by having the combination either in code enforcement or in building of part-time along with full-time is the most efficient way to go through either the code enforcement process or the permit process? And do you see a higher amount of turnaround because of, at least in code enforcement, having, multiple part-time employees?
Right now, we have our part-time employees, we have several that have been there for many years. And so right now, I think the formula, if you will, is working on the code enforcement side. I would iterate the same for the building department staff as well.
And I'd like to add to that. On the building side, it's a little trickier because in some of the positions, you need to have licensed inspectors. And so that gets a little tricky. We just lost our plumbing inspector, so we're bringing a new person on for that. But this is an interesting discussion that you bring up in question, because I know we have this conversation each year, and depending on which side of the council, there are some that want to keep our head count down for full time because that means extra benefits and extra costs. And so we think that we have hit a spot where it's efficient to have the 1 or 2 full-time people there to kind of supervise, and then bring in the part-time people as we need, because then we can ramp up and ramp down as the economy goes and as businesses increase and inspections increase. And I'm not saying there aren't times where we could always use more, and we've used retired employees to come back on a part-time basis, which has worked very well for us too.
With that said, I guess the last question would be, are we happy with where we are? I know in past years there were concerns with the turnaround time of permits, backlogged for many weeks, if not months. I did a project this year that I needed to pull a permit, and it was satisfactory for me in regards to the turnaround time. But are we happy with the number of employees and the turnaround time on the permit process, especially if we do look at other communities and compare?
Yes, I would say we are satisfied with that. We did, you'll hear this in some of the introductions I've already done in some of the future departments tonight. We did roll out a new computerized online system in March this year, and we've had our hiccups, don't get me wrong. We are working through those. Every week we get together for various departments across the city, and we try to work through the nuances, and there's some projects we want to do this winter to streamline things a little bit better. But we have gotten good feedback. People being able to submit everything online, request inspections online. It's a lot less trips to City Hall, which time is money for the builders, and so they've been more efficient. We certainly have some builders who love the system, and others who are used to the paper and pencil type way of doing business who would like to go back. But we've heard the vast majority has been positive, and I think our plan review time has slightly gone down since we've implemented this, and we hope that only gets better over time.
Alderman Brennan?
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm on CAB 100 through the rest of the vehicles, I guess. So it's a little broader for circle back than however, for the years of 2025, 26, and 27, would it be possible to collect the mileage on the anticipated vehicles in those years in the maintenance inception to date?
Alderman, was that CAB 100? Is that what you said?
Through all the vehicles.
Yeah.
Like I said, is beyond the scope of just building, but. And the reason I'm asking is over the course of the next 3 years, we're earmarking roughly $9 to $10 million on vehicles. So I just want to have a better appreciation for sort of the algorithm that staff uses to request a new vehicle.
Certainly, we track that, and some of it is mileage, some of it is hours of use. Not all of these are vehicles, some could be equipment, but we can put that together. Did you want that for a circle back?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yep. You don't know that off the top of your head? I'm really shocked.
All right, additional discussion? All right, we'll move on to something that people could understand, elected officials and administration on page 2-17.
Thank you, Mayor. So with the administration budget, that is generally remained consistent from year to year, certainly into 2025 with a couple exceptions. One is line item 530110, professional services. That is increasing by $30,000, and that's to bring in a consultant for an update to the strategic plan in 2025 after the April election. And then the other item would be, to point out, is 536105, property liability insurance. That's increasing with the market that our broker gives us an anticipated number for. Happy to answer any questions on that. Elected officials has remained the same because, as you all know, that has not changed in some time.
You know, I am curious on that line. I didn't do the math, but in 2023 and 22 is 53,100. Now it's 50,700. Do we have some coupons or something that reduce the cost there?
Is that
page 2-19?
Yeah. Checking. 1 second.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. That's my pay cut, right? I just think I'm finding a few thousand, that 140 that Alderman Toledo's looking for. Now it's down to 137, so.
1,000 at a time.
We'll be here all year. You could circle back on that. It's not that critical.
Why did it go down to 2023? We're going to have to look back at the 2023 number. Finance director says the budgeted number is correct. Presumably the estimated would be as well.
Okay, let me open up generally to questions on either administration or elected officials. This were a bit, I'd say, going once, going twice. All right, Alderman Bram.
I'll ask the question. I was waiting for someone else to ask, but there's a current referral. I know it hasn't been discussed yet in regards to the compensation of elected officials. I know since it hasn't been discussed, it's not reflected in the budget. Would something like that be an appropriate time to utilize as a circle back, leave it the same? What if that referral moves forward? How do we deal with that?
So as I understand it, if the council were to approve an increase, it is not effective until the next election. So we have a cycle to kind of catch up. And if I remember correctly from 1992, when it was last increased, I think it was even weighted for 4 years so that everybody would start at the same rate. I'm not suggesting, I don't know what would happen here, but that's why we have not included anything in the budget. And this was done prior to the referral going in.
Totally understand both points. Thank you.
I'm glad you can remember 1992, 20 years before you were here. All right. Alderman Hill?
You know, that brings up something I've been a little confused about, and maybe you can just clarify, but like, we have several things that are pending referrals that aren't reflected in the budget or the CAB, or sometimes they are, and they're still pending referrals, right? They haven't been decided. Historically, how have we adjusted for those? Like, how have you seen that develop? Because there's some pretty big items that are going through and small items, and how do we adjust for that in years past? I've never really gotten a handle on it. I'd like to, maybe that could be done offline, but maybe if you have a summary, like, how do we adjust for that?
Well, it really depends project to project, item to item. The way that we structure our budget and go through our budget is that we look at that bottom line at the end of the year as far as kind of balancing it out for something that might be a smaller item that the council says this is a priority, we need to get this done, whatever that might be, we can kind of move things around for the bottom line. If it's a large capital project, I think at that time that the referral is the project's voted on, we would have to let the council know that we don't have the funding for this. We would have to plan for that into the future. So it varies from item to item. I know it's not a direct answer, but
If I may, in your experience, has that ever come back where we've had a large project that was, or program that was in process during budget discussions that had to come back because we had to find money again for it going forward, once we'd approved the budget? But before we'd finalized and voted on the budget? It's like during conversations, like a pending referral?
We've had situations where like salt or something was way overpriced. It was like there was a shortage, or there could have been increases in self-insured liability payouts, but those are handled within the leeway of the budget. You know, maybe we'll have to cut funds available for something else, but I don't remember anything on a referral that we would say we're going to take it on without any funds unless it was a smaller project. Alderman Toledo, does anything come to your?
no, nothing comes to mind immediately. Sorry.
Thank you.
All right. Additional discussion? We will move on then to Board of Fire and Police Commissioners on 2-22.
Thank you, Mayor. The BOFPC cost center includes expenses related to the testing and hiring of police and fire positions as mandated per state statutes and collective bargaining agreements. Of note, a requested increase in 2025 is on line item 530110, labeled professional services. That is for a placeholder for anticipated hiring of police and fire positions and police sergeant testing scheduled in 2025. Besides that line item, the rest of the short amount of line items for this particular cost center are relatively flat, going from 24 to 25. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I just have one that, and I'm not sure if I forgot something, but in the salaries and benefits for 22 and 23, they're zero on page 2-22. And I'm not sure if there's something was moved around, or in terms of we're budgeting it differently, or...
Did you say 2-22?
Yeah,
Yeah, we're on 2-. You're one page ahead of us.
Yeah, I'm way ahead of you guys,
yeah,
sorry.
We're on Board of Fire and Police Commission. We do have an answer for you when we get to that.
I do. 2020. I had a question. Well, I'll come back. I'll let Alderman Ardini, did you have?
I was on the same page you were.
I'm sorry, I think maybe it was the 100 line, the 510 100. And we had, I don't know, well, I'll come back to it. I think I know there was a big increase, and I had a note asking why, but maybe it's in there. So, okay. Anyone else on this one? All right, then we will go on to Communications and Marketing 2-22.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, we're on page 2-22. The Communications and Marketing Cost Center includes 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee. Heading into 2024, we had 1 full-time and 1 part-time, and that was part of our budget that we added a communications specialist this year, a full-time. The city's communication team supports the organization by leading, developing, and executing strategic communications and public relations initiatives. The communications team manages and maintains several essential communication channels, including the city's social media platforms, the quarterly Front Porch newsletter, the weekly e-newsletter, multiple city websites, including 5 that require continuous updates and maintenance, news alerts, and systems used for incident communications. The team also oversees marketing campaigns that highlight key initiatives, such as the visitor and tourism efforts under the Explore Elmhurst brand, along with coordinating the Elmhurst Trolley program. In addition, the communication team handles all internal department creative service requests and leads public and media relations efforts. In 2024, the communications team successfully enhanced digital engagement, developed comprehensive marketing strategies, and prioritized accessibility and transparency in government communications. The proposed 2025 budget reflects a strategic approach to aligning resources with the city's communication goals. By expanding outreach, improving engagement tools, and ensuring transparent communication, the communications team will continue to play a vital role in keeping the community informed and engaged in city operations. And just a couple of highlights of the 2025 budget. Line item 530110, which is professional services. This includes an additional $15,000 request for anticipated increases in expenses related to cable TV and Elmhurst TV. Line item 530120, employee training, was part of administration in 2024 and now will be allocated appropriately to this department. And Mayor, to answer your question, the reason 22 and 23 are not listed is previously, and hopefully Director Coyle can correct me if I'm wrong, the communications department was part of the admin budget, and so it was pulled out into its own separate cost center recently. And then lastly, line item 530160, postage, was also part of administration last year and now will be allocated appropriately to this department. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions on the communications and marketing cost center.
Alderman Braham.
On page 222, professional services, and I know Assistant City Manager Johnson, you just spoke to it, but I do want to make this a circle back, and the reason being is in 2022, only a couple of years ago, we were under $70,000 for this budget line item, and what's proposed for 2025 is at $115,000, which is, as stated in the J form, a 15% increase. I'd just like to try to get the J form is very detailed, but get as much detail as possible in addition to the J form to understand why such a significant increase. Are we doing different programming, additional programming? If so, I guess maybe I'm just not aware of it, but so just additional detail past what the J form already states on that line item.
Alderman Braham, to answer your question, we've added programming, and so there's a lot of additional TV services that the city has requested going back to 2022, as your example, when we were at under $70,000. So we've added TV content to try to have more streamlined communication to the public since then.
I know it's a professional service, and we don't have to go out for bid or look for other providers in regards to the video side of it. But have we done so? From my recollection, I don't think we ever have. Have we looked elsewhere, at least done some comparables to see if these increases, along with the increase in content, is what's the going market rates?
We discussed this exact question at the committee level a month or two ago, and there was a request by the Public Affairs and Safety Committee when we go out and look for necessary services to go through that exercise and see if there are other vendors out there, other methods, and so staff will take that direction when we move forward into 25.
Thank you.
City Treasurer, then Alderman Jensen.
I know this was just called a circle back, but the prior year J form does say that there was some reallocation from administrative to this line. That could potentially be part of the increase as well, but it sounds like it'll be a circle back.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is for cable TV and their YouTube channel, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
How many, first of all, do we legally have to broadcast stuff on cable TV still? And second, do we have any idea of viewership of that? And I feel like at some point we're going to not want to, I don't know how much it costs, maybe it's a small amount of it, maybe it's all production, but I don't know. I don't know a lot of people that are still watching this on cable TV rather than YouTube, so.
I'm going to ask Communications Manager Cassandra Schrepp to come up and try to answer that question.
So in terms of our YouTube channel, yes, that is where most of the content lives. Video services are really the way of marketing future. So we have many reels and videos that we put together to communicate the services we have for our public. So we do heavily rely on our video services.
Right, and I'm fully supportive of that. I'm just wondering, do we still need to be broadcasting a cable TV, and how much does that cost?
Oh, we're not doing that.
We don't do that anymore.
We're not doing that anymore.
Well, aren't we live when we're in the council?
We are, but that's on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes.
The recording goes to AT&T.
Do we know the 7 people? Your whole family. All right. Anyone else? Alderman Irby, and then Alderman Nardini.
Thank you, Mayor. Is there, and this is probably for staff question, are there any performance metrics that we should know or the city at wide should know on, when you do advertising, marketing, and you have a $1 million budget and you spend it with whatever ad agency and you get a cost per hit or a cost per exposure? Do we have anything like that here for the city where we have some kind of performance metrics on this so we know what kind of cost or revenue or bang for buck, if you will? Thank you.
We do use our metrics that we see on Facebook, also on our social media pages, as well as our website. How many we look at Google Analytics to see how far of a reach we have with these videos.
I guess as a circle back, if we don't have that tonight, can we get that performance metrics data so we can get some cost per hits or cost per event?
Yes.
So
thank you.
Do we have that data is what you're saying?
We do have that data.
Okay. So Alderman Nardini, then Alderman Nudera, that was a tough thing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might be combining 2 years, but if we have pulled out the salaries and the postage, I don't see a dramatic difference when I look at administration. Why isn't administration down if those have been pulled out and gone to communications and marketing? What am I missing?
I think the difference might be that we added a communications person last year, and that is in the wages full-time. You'll see it was budgeted at 141, estimated at 112 because we didn't hire that person right at the beginning of the year. And so that might be the difference between the two.
But the administration wages are down. Or am I reading it wrong? Because they were 446 in 23 and they're 366 or 357 in 24. On page 2-17, the first line, 510-100.
You are correct. So the administration wages are down, but the administration had one full-time and one part-time in 2022 and 2023. When you flip the page to communications, that is 2 full-time and 1 part-time. So it did go down. Administration did go down, but it's not going to go down by the same number that is in 2024 because that has 1 additional full-time person.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to piggyback off of Alderman Irby. When it comes to cable or any streaming services, are there sponsors that we can use that might help in, defray costs, or is there such a thing when it comes to that?
We have not looked into advertising for meetings like this or general community-wide recordings that we've done. I'm not familiar with any communities that have, but that could be out there. But it's something that we could look into if the council wants us to do that as we move forward.
And this portion of the program has been brought to you by Club Lago. Alderman Ardini, then Alderman Hill.
We need, like, if we really jazz it up, we could have pie fights and stuff like that, and we'd go viral. We'd have plenty of people to pay for sponsorships.
Thank you. I think I missed this. What is public information, line 530295 on 2-22?
So public information, you're talking about the $225,000 expense. So that's made up of several small expenses. So I'll go down the list real quick, and please let me know if you have any questions. We have $20,000 for professional photography, $20,000 for promotional materials, $10,000 for event marketing and networking, $10,000 for social media expenses, $40,000 for promotional campaigns, $60,000 for media. I think that's Explore Elmhurst as well. $5,000 for the Convention and Visitors Bureau grant, which I think former Assistant City Manager Mike Kopp explained last year. It's a placeholder. We don't use that very often, but part of the grant program or the Convention and Visitors Bureau, we have that in there. Another 10 is the Guide to City Services that we put out every year. Another 10 is the city survey. And then lastly, $40,000 is direct mailing, which is a utility billing insert. So all of those comprise that $225,000.
And so the increase, was that related to the Explore Elmhurst marketing, some of that, as well as other items, the increase between the budget in 2022 and 23 versus this year and forthcoming?
Yeah, I believe there was a large increase from 22 to 24, 25 for Elmhurst. Yeah. The city really ramped up our promotional activities, and Explore Elmhurst also is another cost that has gone up as we continue to utilize that tool to help the community out.
And so we're sustaining that marketing cost there with the program. I think I'd just like to know a little bit more, maybe in a circle back, about how those costs increased significantly. I know it's because of the new program, but if we're sustaining it with the same amount of increased marketing and social media, is that pay per hit or whatever those things are involved in that line item? I'd be curious to know. This question brought to you by Pepperidge Farms.
Somebody's hungry. All right, Alderman Ardini.
Thank you again. If in Circlebacker right now, if you can give those numbers again, as I was trying to write them as quickly as you were reading them, I got to like 160, not 225, but the numbers that you had add up to 225? Then
Yes.
Okay.
And we'll detail all that in the circle back.
Thank you.
All right, anyone else on this? All right, we move on to Human Resources 2-24.
Thank you, Mayor. The Human Resources Cost Center includes 3 full-time employees and 2 part-time employees currently. The Human Resources Department supports the city by developing and managing employee resources, including staffing and recruitment, managing employee and labor relations, performance management, training and development, and compensation and benefits. The HR department is the staff liaison to the BOFPC, which facilitates the hiring of police officers and firefighters. So some of the 2024 highlights from the HR department is that they manage all HR functions for all 319 employees. That's full-time, part-time, seasonal, and interns. We had 12 interns across various departments this year. HR also conducted 82 recruitments for various positions. Some of those were multiple recruitments if we were not successful in finding a candidate in the first attempt. HR also initiated new eligibility lists for the position of entry-level police officers and lateral police officers in conjunction with the BOFPC. Also, they completed the promotional list for the rank of fire lieutenant and battalion chief. HR worked with finance and IT on the human capital management ERP software. So we talked about the building department and how they've gone to this online system. We're also rolling in our HR functions into that same ERP software as well. Also, HR administered annual citywide training and safety programming and hosted our first ever benefits fair for our employees. Some of the highlighted expectations for next year is HR would like to update the personnel handbook and complete a new compensation and classification study. Also, to continue collaborating with DMMC's HR Directors Working Group. That's a group that gets together peers from multiple communities across DuPage County. And then lastly, HR plans to facilitate hiring and promoting public safety officers as staff liaison to the BOFPC Commission. This includes new hire police officers, lateral police officers, and firefighter eligibility hiring lists. And then just one item or line item to note is item 530110, professional services. This line item includes a request for $50,000 of additional funds for the new compensation and classification study. The last study was completed in 2022, and it is best practice to review and update the compensation plan every 3 years. This account also funds the fire battalion chief and lieutenant processes, which the city has also budgeted for 2025. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions about the HR department.
Alderman Nardini?
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor. What is a fire battalion chief and lieutenant process?
What was the question? What is that?
Yeah.
Emily, do you mind? Yeah.
I'm happy to I can answer. So we're required by law to make eligibility lists for promotions. We're required, let me back up, we're required to make an eligibility list for hiring. We're also required to have eligibility lists for promotions to lieutenant, battalion chief, and sergeant on the police side. And so we go through a testing process and interviews. The Board of Fire and Police Commission has a role in it to rank all of our current police officers and firefighters. And when positions open up for those, we then turn to this list and say, John Doe Adam Smith is number 1, that's the next lieutenant, or that's the next sergeant, and so forth.
And so who are we paying? Who are we writing a check to?
We hire a testing company to conduct this process, and they have been thoroughly vetted and approved for the use in that type to make sure that they're fair, equitable, and impartial.
One more, so between the study and then the process, how much of the 170 is the study, how much is the hiring process?
$50,000 is a compensation study that I noted, and then the lieutenant and battalion chief promotional testing is approximately $60,000. That's our budget placeholder for that item.
So there is a good chunk, I mean, we're at 170 and you just got me to 110. What's the other 60?
There's $25,000 for citywide training. That could be for any various department. There's $5,000 for required online training. Some of that is by state statute. Is that correct, Emily? Mm-hmm. $9,000 for background checks. Let's see, $8,000 for Comp Core Pro. It's a third party that helps with our work comp claims. We have $9,000 for wellness and biometric screening and flu shots that we do for our employees every year. Printing and mailing is $1,000. Police department polygraphs are roughly $1,200. And then there's another $1,500 for a Dropbox, which is just an online software that we use annually.
By the way, how long are eligible? What's the lifetime of an eligibility list for the sergeant? Is it 3 years or 5? 3.
3, and I believe it expires in October of 2025
Thank
for
you.
sergeant.
All right. Additional questions, discussion? Alderman Irby?
Thank you, Mayor. Performance metrics for human resources. Historical 2022, we're on page 224, of course. 2022, you divide that by, there might be 319 employees then. I'm not sure exactly what the employee count was, but if I use the same employee count for 2025 proposed at 319, that number is $1,695 per employee. We move to 2025, that number is $4,800. That's a difference of $3,105 employee, or 183% increase. I would like to know what we're getting for that extra 183%, and one of those performance metrics might be turnover. So is that possible to get that in turnover? So if we spend that much more money in training and keeping retention high, compared to say 2022 at $1,695, or whatever that number is once the performance metric comes out, can we get a little bit more clarity on what we're getting for a dollar? Meaning, if I have a lower retention or a better retention rate, then I don't need to train as much, and that might be $100,000 a person. If we lose 6 people in turnover, someone's got to train them and get them up to speed. So there's a cost to that. And so by having those performance metrics, we can have some better idea of what we're getting for our money here. I'm not saying we're not getting our value, but without performance metrics, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Thank you.
Thank you. I feel like I heard that somewhere tonight. I think you're, and I'll let staff jump in, but I don't think you can just take a number and divide it by another number and say it's per. You can, but we do training irrespective of whether someone is a new employee or whether they're here. For instance, in our police department, I know we do 40 hours of training, I think, per officer per year. And then if it's a new officer, we're sending them to the academy for, I can't remember, it was 160 hours or something. And so you can't just break it down. And same thing here, whether we had 60 employees or 160, we still have to maintain the personnel, the workers' comp. We have to maintain all of the benefits that we do. So I guess, we could hire more people and it'd be cheaper, but that's not really a fair metric, because I could, if we hired 1,000 more people, I think we could drive the cost down significantly per employee. But it just, I don't know that there's a metric, and I'm not sure, unless staff thinks they have one, that it's not fair really to ask for that.
If we did, it wouldn't only be in the HR department, because we have training throughout, as you indicated, Mayor. We have training in the fire department, we have training in the police department. I think what we look at as more of a metric for retention is just that number of employees and their length of stay. I mean, we're a small enough organization where we can talk with the employees if they are leaving to understand why they're leaving. So I don't know that trying to put a metric to this is really going to tell us what you're looking for. And I'm happy to talk to you offline more about that if you'd like.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, I mean, I really don't know what those metrics are until I see them, and therefore I have no clue what the number is. Now, I do know my wife is in HR, and so I can ask her how the Chicago Hilton does with 1,200 employees, and they don't have a police force, they don't have a fire department, they're not a city operation. So by us comparing those numbers of Elmhurst to Villa Park and our surrounding communities, that seems like that would be of value to us. The more we have performance metrics, the more we know how we compare.
There are certain metrics that we talk about, between the municipalities, but that's why I say I don't know of anyone that measures here that we would talk about. But
well, and it's a great idea, and I love that. And as the Mayor said, we do talk manager to manager about that kind of stuff. But I don't know necessarily how Villa Park or Lombard or Addison or anyone in DuPage County is budgeting for their HR department. So to try to get apples to apples, to really get that true comparison, is so difficult because we don't have a standard necessarily that all communities follow.
All right, well, you can talk offline, and if you want to do a circle back, if you come up with something, you can bring it up next time. All right. Additional discussion in HR, City Treasurer?
Observation I just had on professional services, as the amount has increased, I was curious, went back a little bit, and not saying this will be the case for this year, but it looks like we've always budgeted a higher amount and came out below it, so just that observation I had there.
All right, additional discussion? Alderman Nardini.
Thanks. Just a thing to discuss Alderman Irby's effort to get a metric. As I go through municipal budgeting, I absolutely relate to wanting to be able to compare on a reliable basis. My argument against your department by department stuff, I don't think it makes sense to do it just by employee number. Like, there's too much in a department to judge solely based on building inspections, to divide it by building inspections, to use the whole building department's budget based on, they do more than just inspect. So like when I hear you look for metrics, that totally speaks to me, that would be something I could hold on to, but I don't think that numerator and denominator are right. I don't think what the denominator is right. We can't just do it by employees, would be my take.
Alderman Toledo?
Thanks. Just, could you just please refresh my memory on the retiree insurance bump up between 23 and 24? And I just don't remember what that was.
Your line?
Line item 520350.
Yep, I can take that. So one of the state laws is that we have to allow municipal employees to continue on our health insurance. They do so at their own cost, not at the city's cost. And prior to 2024, that cost was kind of buried in each department. And that really wasn't a department cost, like a police department paying for retired police officers. That's not a cost of providing current police service. That's a cost of the retiree insurance. So we put this number in HR to basically centralize all of the retirees that we do have to cut the health insurance check for, but you'll also see in the general fund there is also a revenue to offset that, such that this line item is a net zero impact on the city of Elmhurst. But we just have to account for it somewhere.
I will say, I mean, as we change budgeting frameworks, it's hard to, I guess it'll keep us on our toes. We ask new questions, but I understand why you're doing it in terms of it makes better sense. But for those of us who have been here for a while, then it's kind of jarring to figure out, follow the ball, But okay, additional questions, discussion, information technology. 2-26.
Thank you, Mayor. Moving right along, the city's IT department provides IT services for all city departments and employees in order to serve the community in the most effective way possible. The IT department had several key highlights from 2024, which are as follows. They provided over 4,300 support service work orders completed for various city departments. They worked with the police department to replace in-squad and body camera replacements this year. Also, cybersecurity enhancements included implementing schedules for cybersecurity training, firewall updates, patch management, secure password management, fortifying system backups, and implementing enhanced system monitoring. I think that topic is as important today as it's ever been, especially with cyber terrorists and security changing all the time. Also, Tyler Enterprise Permitting, as we talked about, we have this new ERP system. IT worked hand in hand to work on the go live for the Community Development Department, but they're also working on the city's utility building, which we call UB, and Human Capital Management, which we call HCM. Again, that's a human resources part of that software. So IT has been working hand in hand with various departments on those implementations this year. And then lastly, they finalized the City Hall security camera project and started the Public Works Garage security camera upgrade as well. A couple quick highlights for 2025. There's PD squad car IT equipment updates. maintenance to the ALPR, which is the automated license plate reader system throughout the town, updates to the police department's live scan platform, which is the fingerprinting system, conference room display replacement that is not reflected by the conference display being covered today, and then working on fiber projects that will hopefully reduce our fee-based communications infrastructure to AT&T and Comcast. As the industry sees migration to cloud-based services, the city can expect to see an increase in line item 530611, which is subscription-based IT agreements. However, it's important to note we will see a reduction in 530615, which is software maintenance. For example, in 2025, subscription increased by 24,000, but software maintenance dropped by almost 60,000, resulting in a net savings to the city. Two line items to highlight: 530110, which is professional services. That's proposed to increase in 25 due to additional Tyler Technologies professional services. Again, that's the city's new ERP provider. And then line item 570310, which is IT equipment. That increased for next year, or is proposed for next year, due to a need for replacement of end-of-life squad car MDTs and other legacy network equipment. So I went through that very fast, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on 2-26 regarding the IT department.
Discussion. Alderman Irby.
Thank you, Mayor. That was a scratch of the nose, but I'll take it. The IT department has an extensive list of operations they do. And trying to come up with a question since I scratched my nose. I'm going to defer back to Mayor and Brennan. I think I might get a question off in time. Thank you.
All right, the Alderman from the 7th Ward yields his time to the Alderman from the 7th Ward.
Thank you. So from a Tyler Technologies perspective, I see that we're doing some additional uptaking of additional SKUs, et cetera. Two questions related to that, and I'm on page 227 and 226. But, how is either IT staff or, just staff in general getting trained on this ERP system? Is that part of the deployment cost?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So my second question is, with what we're implementing now, have we paid for those SKUs day one and it's just a phased deployment, or is it incremental? Is the subscription incremental based on when we actually turn it on?
When you say SKU, that SKU, and it's, yeah, all right, just.
Sorry.
So I can answer that question. So for the Tyler ERP conversion, it's really both. So at the beginning, when we purchased the software, we purchased a major outlay, which was the software itself. And then as we've been working through implementation, we pay a per hour hourly rate that's been negotiated in the contract for so many hours of implementation. So as we've gone through the implementation, we've paid for those hourly services as well. And then one of the things that just went before council was moving the, right now we are hosted within our own cloud. We'll be going to Tyler's cloud. Then that will be paid as like an annual fee that we'll pay to Tyler for those services.
I see. Okay. One last question. So does staff IT or staff, from HCM or finance department, feeling self-sufficient with what's been turned on?
And we are still, I think as Assistant Manager Johnson talked about with Energov and also certainly with HCM, we're still working through implementing certain portions of those. So we are live with the HR and the payroll component. We are still working to automate some of those processes. We are not live yet with utility billing. We are hoping to be live with that beginning of 2025. So that's the last phase that will go into production.
Dini, are you concerned because you're paying utility bills now?
Could that be explained in human
Well-
language? Could you talk to not high school age kids with your question and your answer?
Alderman Brennan, you can answer that, and then you have another question, I think, or.
I didn't understand the line of questioning, forgive me.
Yeah.
Well, first off, my last comment was gonna be, yeah, I do this for a living, not Tyler, but I see software and technology go into businesses and in municipalities, et cetera, for a living. And so Elmhurst has done an awesome job with implementing and uptaking this system as aggressively as you have. So huge kudos to staff and really embracing the change to take on the new technology. And to answer your question, it's just a line of questioning around, this is a big deal. This is a big change for staff in the city to uptake this technology. And it takes time to get settled into and feel self-sufficient with respect to its capabilities and supporting it, et cetera. So I was just wondering if the departments were feeling comfortable with the technology that has been implemented.
And the couple that you were pointing out, the couple items that you were asking were what?
Well, one was around subscription and whether or not we have paid for that at the very beginning, and now implementing it was one question, because it's such a big package, if you will. It's almost impossible to implement it all.
Okay.
So it sounds like utility billing is the last
Correct.
part of the technology that's being implemented. So.
Correct.
And, I mean, we're converting over different things. It wasn't done all at once.
Correct.
And I'll just throw my questions here. This part is not brought to you by Tyler Technologies, but I had some frustrations, as you know, with trying to process liquor licenses. This is usually I look at the renewal applications. It was impossible to do it. I was surprised to see that a system as sophisticated as this, you can't print it out, and you can't read it on the screen. So that's the highest level of security. And I don't know, and I know that a couple, and I think you're aware, a couple of real estate attorneys have expressed frustration of trying to pull their fees for the transfer tax. So are we paying for these, I guess, first, are they fixing that? And second, who pays for it? Do we have to pay for it? Because I'm sure that other liquor commissioners or real estate attorneys are having the same difficulty that we're having.
So the answer is it depends. So there are certainly certain things that are included in the base agreement that we have. For certain customizations, whether it be custom reports or custom integrations, those would come at a cost to the city. So it just depends on what the item is. As Assistant Manager Johnson said, we've heard, along the way for the EnerGov process, we've heard some complaints of people that were used to doing pen and paper. But we've also heard kudos for people that like that they can do it at 8 o'clock and they don't have to come here to City Hall to start the transfer stamp process. So we've heard both. I would maybe, I don't know if Assistant Manager Johnson or Director Kravitz want to talk about the Tyler Assist, which is something that we are wanting to add for the EnerGov, which will just help us to continue to, EnerGov was a highly customizable system, and that's an additional professional service that we were asking for in this budget.
So, I mean, I gave two examples of not things that was like a custom report that we want because we in Elmhurst, but these would need, but this is something I assume every municipality who's on the system would want to have. So is there like a process where we initiate a request that they fix for everyone, or do we have to contract to have them fix what should work?
So if it's a customizable report where we want to see certain information in a certain way, then that would be at our cost. If there's not a pre-generated report that can do that. We also have some of our IT staff are wonderful in that they can look at how they can write reports behind the scenes. So we've done that for a lot of EnerGov issues, also for some of the utility billing integrations that we're working on. The IT department has been fantastic in helping us think outside the box to maybe where we can have our own solution versus something where we would need to pay an additional fee for. So it really depends on what it is, what the integration is, what we have the capability to do in-house, and what we don't and we need to contract out. So it depends. is really the
Right,
answer.
I mean, I don't want to beat, as you say, a dead horse, but these aren't reports that I see we're looking for. These are processes that are so clumsy, they're almost, like, I shouldn't say it here, but like a lot of our liquor license applications for the first time, I couldn't review them all because I couldn't do them. And it's not because I'm technically lacking, but because it would have taken about 15 hours to go through. So these are system problems, not custom reports. So are they fixing them? Do we have to pay to get them to fix them?
Well, if you want to, so it's a little bit of both in that, so we're trying to continually look at the processes as we've gone through the first liquor license renewal, as we've gone through now the first business license renewal. We are continually looking at the data, you know, on what has been brought in, on what the process is, on what we can change, how we can make the process better. Again, the EnerGov, it's a highly customizable platform, and I'll kind of compare and contrast that. Accounts payable, there is one way you can do accounts payable in Munis. And that's it. It's, here's step 1 through 10, this is how you do it. There's a little bit of, you know, variances that you can do in workflow, but it's pretty much set. Whereas EnerGov is, tell me what your process is, tell me how you do it, and then they build it to fit our process. So we are taking a step back as part of those renewal processes to try to reevaluate what's worked, what hasn't. Are there different integrations we can build? Are there different fields we can add? And how can we make the process better? So it's a continually learning process for us, and it's a process for us of how do we make everything work in the most efficient way that we can for everyone.
I'll follow up offline a little, because to me it's like, I don't care if there's one way to do it. Like if it's an iPhone as opposed to an Android, you do it the iPhone way, but it works and it's elegant. And if this system worked, then I wouldn't be raising the question. But these are, I gave a couple examples of something that just doesn't work. So it's like having an iPhone that won't make outgoing calls, you know.
And specifically to liquor licenses, we are looking at how you can look at all of the applications and all the information.
Okay.
As you'd like.
Sorry, that's my portion of the frustration program. Additional discussion? Alderman Irby.
Thank you for indulging me on that question. 2 questions in here, and you can answer them in any order, or we do a circle back. The total budget of 3151, once we do in 420 for 2025, we're on page 226. Once we take that number and we do our interdepartmental charges to the other departments, where does this number end up? Is it a number lower? Does it go to 0? Or where does that number go once we take 3,151,420 and back all our, take out all the IT interdepartmental charges? So I know either we come to 0 or we come to some net number that is absorbed purely in the Information Technology 1015 budget. That's question 1. Question 2 is kind of follow up on the mayor and Alderman Brennan's question of, he covered the cost, but what are some of the benefits we're going to get out of our 8.5 to 1 million, whatever the number is. I think it's 265 for the professional services, 617,570 on line, 530611. If you add those 2 up, deduct the 53,000, say, in savings, or the delta, which I think would be higher, maybe 150. Let's just say we're at 800,000 for simple math here in the meeting. What are we getting for 800,000 that you guys foresee in the next 3 or 4 operating cycles, annual operating cycles, that would make everybody comfortable in the city to say that was a great investment in Tyler? So let's not talk about costs. Let's now move to benefits, because I only buy benefits. I don't buy features. 2 questions. Thank you.
So the answer to your first question is on page 9-34. The chart on the bottom has a breakout of all of the departmental chargebacks. If you take out the first line, which is the amount funded by the Capital Improvement Fund. I'm going to turn it over to Director Coyle for the second part.
So some of the benefits of the Tyler system, I think it's a lot of automation, a lot of having better information available. I'll just speak right now. I'll speak to like the purchasing cycle, certainly, and then we could kind of go over that list for all the different modules. But in the purchasing cycle, we were largely pen and paper before, for the most part. I mean, we had a system where we input the data in. It was a DOS-based system. It was very old. It didn't have a lot of functionality. So this system now allows us to, one, have purchase orders and have controls. So the system has internal controls that make sure that the right people in the organization are approving the purchase. Same thing on the accounts payable side. All invoices go in. There is a set workflow where we make sure that the right person approves all of those invoices before they are sent to council to be paid. So that's just a control standpoint from that cycle that it has improved. Also, having information available at our fingertips. The old system, again, pen and paper. There were invoices that were either in file cabinets in the finance department, or if you know the garage, as you walk up to the employee entrance, all of our prior year invoices were stored in the garage. So if you had a FOIA, you were going to the garage and digging through boxes to respond to that or to get any sort of historical documents. Now going forward, I can pull up an expense here in this budget meeting and be able to look at the invoice as we sit here to be able to get that information. It makes our audit so much easier as we're trying to provide that information to our auditors when they're asking for invoices. Much more information at our fingertips. Certainly when departments are going through the budget process, they don't have to come down to finance and ask us for what was this invoice that we spent. They have the ability to pull up that information at their fingertips to make their work much more efficient. So that's just one example for the purchasing cycle, but we could go through all of the different things that we've implemented and talk about how it's made us more efficient, how there's better internal controls that are surrounding our operations for everything that we've put into place.
Thank you for that. Quick follow-up. When you have all that data at your fingertips, on a typical system maneuver from System A to System B, System A has all the historical data, whether it's on paper or computer or a combination thereof. Can you elaborate on how we're getting all that data, both electronic, which I think is easier, hopefully, and then paper? How are we getting our historical up to where you guys are happy, or where you have that data that you need from the historical record? How are we getting that into Tyler?
So we've done that on a module by module basis. So the accounts payable cycle, as an example, was one where we decided that we did not need to pull in historical data. We pulled in 1 year of kind of addenda data into Munis, but the other historical data lives in the old system. We still have all of the paper invoices. We will keep everything according to what the state statutes. So for municipalities, the state tells us how long we have to keep things, and we even have to request for permission before we destroy anything. So we'll still comply with all of those regulations, but we chose to not pull that historical data into Munis. So at some point we will need to work with the IT department on how do we make sure that we retain all of the data in the old system, and we've talked internally on kind of what some options may be. Right now we're still using that legacy system. That's still what our utility billing system is on, so it's still in use. We're not at that point where we need to start sunsetting and kind of archiving that data. EnerGov and utility billing, because of the nature of what those are, we did bring in historical data for those two modules, or we are for utility billing. So that'll be a little bit different because of the nature of wanting customers to see their historical utility billing information, and then for EnerGov to have the historical permits, because we do rely on that a lot in the community development department. We chose to bring that historical data in.
All right, I'm going to, at this point, because we are announced as commencing our council meeting at 8:30, it's 8:45. Clerk Tamer has confirmed that the Election Commission has finished their operation, and we can now begin our council meeting. Since there are a few people in the council chambers, I'm going to ask to have a motion to adjourn this meeting. If I don't know how heavy the agenda is, and I don't know if people have if they want to stay and continue to work after the council meeting up till 10 o'clock. Or I see that, okay, I was kidding. All right, so we will pick up Alderman Irby from, if you have additional questions. I know we're but we'll pick up when we, at our next committee of the whole. We will adjourn, take about a 3-minute break, 5-minute break, and then we will then call the council meeting to order. May I have a motion to adjourn? Alderman Deuter with a motion, Alderman Nudera with a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed say nay. We are adjourned. Oh,
Please take your laptops into council if